Let's do the news. So this happened. I guess this was a few hours ago. This kind of drama that took place in Parliament in the UK. Let's jump across the pond. So oddity, weirdness, and I want to talk about it. Jeremy Corbyn tabled a no confidence vote, was trying to table a no confidence vote in the Prime Minister herself. Now, there is a distinction between tabling a no confidence vote in the Prime Minister herself, which is relatively meaningless, versus tabling one against the government. First, let's take a look at what took place. Let's flip it so you can see it.
Mr. Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, I've listened very carefully to all of the answers the Prime Minister gave during this lengthy exchange today. I've listened very carefully to what members on all sides of the House have said. And it's very clear that it is very bad, unacceptable that we should be waiting almost a month before we have a meaningful vote on a crucial issue facing the future of this country. The Prime Minister has obdurately refused to ensure that a vote took place on the date she agreed. She refuses to allow a vote to take place this week and is now, I assume, thinking the vote will be on the 14th of January, almost a month away. This is unacceptable in any way whatsoever. So, Mr. Speaker, as the only way I can think of ensuring a vote takes place this week, I am about to table a motion which says the following: that this House has no confidence in the Prime Minister due to her failure to allow the House of Commons to have a meaningful vote straight away on the withdrawal agreement and framework for future relationships between the UK and the European Union. And that will be tabled immediately, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The problem with this is its tabling is dependent upon whether or not the Prime Minister would allow it to be tabled. So Jeremy Corbyn doesn't necessarily have power to push this and force this to be voted upon. This is not the same thing as a no confidence vote in the government itself, which could compel a new government to form, meaning it could compel an election providing that a new government can't be formed that has approval of Parliament. This is something else. This is Corbyn essentially saying we don't have confidence in the Prime Minister because the Prime Minister is not bringing her Brexit bill to be voted upon. Now, if you remember, the Prime Minister was supposed to have a vote on this, I think it was like last week, and she pulled the vote because it would have been one of the most historic defeats in the history of defeats of the Parliament. She was going to get utterly embarrassed. Now, she had been saying up until the last minute, I'm going to have this vote, I'm going to have this vote, I'm going to have this vote. Okay, now I'm not having the vote. Her cabinet kept telling her, you're going to get defeated. It's going to be embarrassing. Don't do it. The public, for the most part, it was getting across that this was unliked. And she pulled the vote. It was embarrassing, but that level of embarrassment was better than failing on a massive fucking level by having Parliament voted down in historic numbers. Corbyn and Labour pushed against this. Now, the reason why they wanted to force her to have that vote was because they knew that she was going to lose in historic numbers, and if she would have lost to such a degree, Theresa May would have likely been recalled. Now, they had a leadership challenge to Theresa May. Theresa May won that leadership challenge, but she had 117 people voting against her, and many of the people who were voting for her were on her payroll as backbenchers. So it's not like she has a huge amount of support. Here's the thing. Regardless of whether or not Theresa May has support or not, meaning whether people disagree with her Brexit bill, Conservatives may still back her regardless. Even though they may have issues with Theresa May, if Labour is calling a challenge that will potentially force another election, her Conservative Party may stand by her even if they're against her, because as bad as Theresa May is, they don't necessarily want a Jeremy Corbyn. Just saying. That said, this is not that. Like, what he's pushing here is a no confidence vote in the prime minister herself, which is no legal authority at all. It's ultimately just, people expressing displeasure at Theresa May. That's different than a no confidence vote in the government. I'm trying to make that very clear. That's why I'm repeating this, because this is utterly confusing in the events that have been taking place. It is unknown whether Theresa May is even going to allow him to do this, because it is up to the prime minister's discretion on whether to allow a vote like this. You can do it on opposition days, but Labour has no days within this year that they can table this vote. Theresa May has decided that she was going to have the vote for the Brexit deal, meaning they call it the quote-unquote meaningful vote. That is essentially Parliament's giving their say on yay or nay on the withdrawal agreement. Theresa May has pushed this all the way out until January, and Labour has been dramatically against this because, after all, they know that that vote is going to fail. Theresa May came back from an embarrassing, utterly humiliating display from the standpoint of Brussels and EU begging all of these leaders of these countries, or Juncker and these guys, please give me concessions. Please, I just need concessions. I can't go back empty-handed. In which case, they sent her back empty-handed. And she tried to put a positive spin on what was an utterly humiliating experience. This is why Jeremy Corbyn is so animated about that vote, because Jeremy Corbyn knows she would lose that vote. And this, they may call it a political game of trying to shame the prime minister in having this vote. A bit of the steam was taken out of it when she says January, but he doesn't want it to be January. He wants this to be sooner rather than later. If it's sooner, this vote will fail. If it's later, she may be able to convince people on her team and enough Tories in the DUP to back her. He doesn't want to give her that opportunity. He needs this to take place now, hence what he just did. If you notice, he was messing up. He was less confident. It was aggressive. It was pushed, but it seemed to be this kind of forced play. Let's go through the story real quick. I'll make sure I don't want to miss anything on this. So let's flip. And because I want to talk about the last part of this, the politics of this. Because we don't know what Jeremy Corbyn has in his back pocket. Do you attack her in this way if you can't win this vote? And if you can't win this vote, what's the point? And not just if you can't win this vote, what's the point? If the entire goal in this is to shame the prime minister into a vote, by having this, you could say, non-binding vote on her, I'm not quite sure that's going to work. She set it out for January. There's no shaming her into this, because if she takes this vote now, she'll lose. The shame is easier to bear than an utter and complete, indomitable humiliation of losing her meaningful vote. I hope that's clear. At the heart of somewhat disorienting spectacle in Westminster this evening, this relative straightforward fact: the official opposition, Labour, can call a binding confidence vote in the government that, if won, would lead to a general election, provided no government commanding the confidence of the House was formed within 2 weeks. Corbyn did not do that. He instead tabled a non-binding motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister, which is not in the form of words explicitly called by the Fixed Term Parliament Act, and does not force the government to allot any parliamentary time. Straightforward, to the point. Key players have lined up behind the Prime Minister and is now telling Corbyn he is running scared of a full confidence vote. Meaning, Corbyn could call a non-confidence vote in the government itself. Corbyn decided not to do that. If Corbyn decided not to do that, then they're making the argument that Corbyn is running scared from that confidence vote because Corbyn believes he would lose that confidence vote. So instead, he decided to call a vote in the Prime Minister herself. Since Corbyn has tabled this motion, there has been conflicting reports about whether the government would allow it. Meaning, it's unknown whether Theresa May would allot time for him to have this. In some cases, initially they were saying yes. More recently, they were saying no. Let's go to another one. At the end of that statement, the Prime Minister got up and just walked out. Let's see. All right. Corbyn tabled a no confidence vote in Theresa May on Monday evening. While the government is not obliged to schedule a confidence vote before Christmas, the Labour leader, and the reason is because opposition gets its days, and opposition can call this one its day, but its day is not until next year. The Labour leader said a refusal to do so would demonstrate that she was unable to command the confidence of the House of Commons. He's trying to shame her into it. If you don't call this, it means that you don't have the confidence of Commons. By the same token, they can make the same argument that you don't want to call the official no confidence vote because you believe that you would lose that confidence vote. Announcing his intention, Corbyn told the Commons it was very clear, it's bad, it's unacceptable that we should be waiting almost a month before we have a meaningful vote on May's Brexit deal. Of course he's going to say that. He wants that vote sooner rather than later. He doesn't want to give her time to cobble together enough votes in order to pass whatever she's going to pass. Now, that said, May didn't get any additional concessions from the European Union. That doesn't necessarily mean that if in the course of a month she's unable to. From Theresa May's standpoint, she wants to extend that time frame as much as possible because she wants to be able to have enough time to try to get a couple of votes together. From Labour's standpoint, they want to strike while the iron is hot, and they want her to make that vote now, sooner rather than later, before she can cobble together enough forces to pass her Brexit bill. January 14th is when the Prime Minister is trying to push. He added that the motion intended to table aimed specifically at the Prime Minister, not at the government as a whole. The only way I can think of ensuring a vote takes place this week. As Corbyn went to sit down after finishing his remark, May stood up and walked out. Here's the catch. The DUP, which props Theresa May up, said it would back the Prime Minister, with Westminster's leader, Nigel Dodd, saying that the MPs would not support the antics of the Labour Party. While the Tory right and the DUP pledging support, were some indications last night that the government might allow the Labour motion to be debated swiftly because Conservatives' whips were confident of winning. Meaning, look, we might let you have this vote just to show the clownishness of this. These antics won't work. We'll stand by the Prime Minister if it's between you and her. All right, let's see. And I thought there was another one, Financial Times. Right here. UK Labour government Jeremy Corbyn has tabled a motion on no confidence in Theresa May leadership after she announced the MPs would not vote on her Brexit deal until mid-January. Critics suggested that the move was a gimmick, given that there were no binding mechanisms for Parliament to declare no confidence solely in the Prime Minister as opposed to the government itself, which could trigger an election. Now understand, Corbyn wants an election. And if Corbyn didn't trigger a no confidence vote in the government itself, that means he doesn't have the votes for it. This move came after May fended off opposition demands to hold a vote on the Brexit plan, originally scheduled for last week, but pulled as the Prime Minister admitted she would lose by a substantial margin before Christmas. It would be a matter for the government to allow time to debate the motion. When officials said Downing Street was considering the motion, will respond in due course. Look, from a political standpoint, like I said before, May doesn't want this vote now because if this vote was held now, she'd lose. By the same token, pushing it out to January the 14th gives her time to try to cobble together the number of votes that she needs in order to pass the bill. She doesn't want the meaningful vote at this moment. Simultaneously, Labour does, because Labour know that she would lose and that they could potentially try to get a new election out of this. Labour wants a new election. That's what they want. The catch is, if Labour didn't try to trigger this election, then they don't have the votes for it. Jeremy Corbyn had been working with the various members of the DUP in order to try to find agreement. If he didn't call for no confidence vote in the government itself, it means that they don't have the votes to get that no confidence vote. When I first heard this, I thought, maybe Corbyn knows something that I don't know. Of course that's true, but maybe he knows it from the standpoint of politics. well, behind the scenes. If Corbyn is attacking her in this way, the other thing I thought of, maybe they're setting her up for a fall, but I think that's less likely. Like, maybe it's one of those things where Corbyn does have that support, and then having that support can get a no confidence vote in the prime minister. But that doesn't seem to be true. Like the DUP is saying, yeah, we're back in the prime minister. And then when vote time comes, they're saying this loudly so the prime minister has a false sense of security when they have their vote, in which case they can vote her down. That seems less likely to me. If that was true, that would be done on a no confidence vote of the government itself, not just a no confidence vote in Prime Minister Theresa May. So that's what's taking place right now across the pond. We'll see. Cheryl Brandon, Theresa May shows disrespect for the parliament when she walked out without answering the Labour Party leader. Yes, fair enough. Corbyn is a rock star at the moment. Yes, Corbyn is a rock star at the moment. But in this particular case, this looks like a political gimmick. But we'll see. Corbyn is playing a game, luring May into choosing whether to hold a no confidence vote or to lose or win narrowly a table vote by the Brexit and lose terribly. That's what he's trying to do. Yes, he's trying to force her or shame her into putting a vote up for Brexit. But she doesn't have to do that. Nor is she going to do that. Theresa May is not tabling that vote for Brexit until January. And even then, it's a question of whether she'll do it, only because she doesn't have the votes. Like, that she would lose a humiliating vote. Labour wants her to have that humiliating vote, but she doesn't. All the incentives in the world are for her not to have that vote, for that very reason of failure. Libertarian Socialist Future. The vote has been delayed too long. Yes, the vote has been delayed too long. Apparently playtime is over in Brexit. I prefer Corbyn negotiating because he keeps the citizens in mind. Yes. Like, what if GM Motors had their employees in mind? Agreed. Corporations tend to have their profits in mind. They want to maximize their profits. Well, oftentimes that's at the expense of the workers and of labor. Corbyn tends to have a very keen mind on human beings and the effect of governmental policy on human beings. I also would prefer him negotiating Brexit. I think he would look out for the citizenry a hell of a lot more. The question is, what can he do within the context of Brexit if the European leaders refuse to negotiate additional Brexit? At that point, you have your Mad Max Brexit. All right, I'm going to end this because this video has gone far too long. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support through Patreon. Thanks all.